Night Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Night Vision. This is your first time here. I hope you'll come again. If you've been here before, welcome back. So good to be here with you tonight. It's an exciting show, and with everything that's going on in the world, make sure we tapped into this bit of news that's coming out regarding the UFO field. We're going to be, having the Congressional Oversight Committee looking into the UFO subject and UFO evidence as a result of a former military whistleblower. And it sounds a little bit more real than it may have in the past. I mean, we've been talking about disclosure for so many years, but it looks like we might be getting close. And our guest tonight is someone that I can't wait to get her opinion on just what's going on and to look at sort of where we've been, because she's been putting in the hours on keeping the statistics on UFO sightings and flaps and hotspots in the United States. So we're going to have a look at that and see what's been going on. But before we bring on our guest, of course, we got to bring on James, our historian, get his input. Oh, you're a little slow.
It's probably the time of night for me.
It was like what do you call it? Rendering.
The washing machine, I call it.
The washing machine. Is the weather still kind of iffy over there?
Yeah, we've got a major electrical storm over. So, I've just got to say about this rendering stuff, though, wouldn't it be great if we could somehow turn that washing machine into an actual washing machine? So while we're waiting for a website to load, it would also do a washing load as well.
Doing the laundry. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But it's been kind of crazy. Of course, we've got all this stuff going on politically and socially in both of our countries. Of course, you're sitting in France, but you are British. And so we're keeping a close eye on the politics in both countries. But sort of going into or going beyond the din, there's other things going on that seem to be quite interesting in the UFO field. And I wonder if I could ask James to play that first clip, or the last clip that I sent actually, but the first one regarding the whistleblower, because I think it'd be a good place to start the show and see if you guys agree with me that it's sort of more serious than I've ever seen it taken on news. And also it seems like, and James can chime in on this, that there's a lot of news being covered about this throughout the world. So it kind of makes me think, I hate to say this, but are they preparing us? So we'll see. But if you could just hit that video, and then we'll bring on our very special guest.
Sure thing.
The House Oversight Committee is in the beginning stages of planning a hearing on UFOs. This follows claims from a whistleblower that the U.S. government is keeping secret its studies of an extraterrestrial craft. Air Force veteran and former intelligence official David Grush sat down with investigative journalist Ross Coulthart, who's reporting for News Nation. Coulthart is an award-winning journalist and author who has reported for the Australian version of 60 Minutes, as well as other programs. He has spent years investigating the UFO question. Grush said the military has kept a UFO program secret from the public and from Congress for decades.
When you say crash retrieval, what do you mean?
These are retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles, call it spacecraft if you will. It's probably not the right parlance, but no kidding, non-human, exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
The revelations have sparked up debate in public view and a slew of articles this week, some calling for full disclosure by the government of any and all information on non-human aircraft. And the interest in UFOs may only intensify as Congress gears up for this hearing, when we could hear from David Grush, this time testifying. Investigative journalist Ross Coulthart, who interviewed Grush, joins us now. And Ross, I got to tell you, the public reaction to this interview has been really strong and deeply divided between those who've long believed the government has such craft and those who believe that those who do believe it are wearing tinfoil hats. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised in the least, Elizabeth. I think we're all entitled to be sceptical. I think what Mr. Grush wants, though, is for his allegations to be tested. I mean, one of the things I think that people need to remember is he has given evidence under oath to both of the intelligence committees in the Congress, the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he's also given evidence under oath to the Inspector General of the intelligence community. And his allegations have been supported by the Inspector General as being both urgent and credible.
When you say his allegations were found, I mean, the IG is taking the complaint, it's urgent and credible. Is it urgent and credible that he suffered some sort of blowback for trying to make this public, or that his actual story itself about extraterrestrial craft is urgent and credible?
Well, what we do know is that in support of Mr. Grush's allegations, a number of people did testify in camera to the Inspector General, and they supported Mr. Grush's allegations. We know that Mr. Grush has given allegedly the locations of where these craft are stored, the names of the people in charge of the program and the gatekeepers allegedly controlling access to that program, both from within the Pentagon and from apparently a private aerospace company.
And you did very carefully vet David Grush before you sat down with him.
Absolutely. Mr. Grush is, I've spoken probably to a dozen people in the intelligence community who've confirmed that David Grush is a person of absolutely impeccable reputation. He left the military in April with high commendations from his commanders, and as was seen by people earlier this week in the debrief, in the article by Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal, there are people who've spoken on the record in support of Mr. Grush's claims, including a bird colonel called Carl Nell, who's basically supported the fact that, quote, we are not alone.
10 seconds.
Extraordinary allegations that I know require require extraordinary evidence, but the simple fact is they need proof.
I got to ask you, 10 seconds. Do you believe him?
I do. I think he's highly credible, and I think his allegations should be investigated.
All right. Ross Coulthart, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Good to have you on the show, and congratulations on the interview. And tune in this Sunday to hear new...
Wow. You see what I mean? That's very straightforward, comparatively speaking, to how UFOs, UAPs are normally covered on the news.
And in the UK, I've got to say, in the past day, there's been 11 headlines. I'm not talking about buried within newspapers or media reports. I mean, headlines on this topic. And again, around the same theme, it's been very interesting to see, sort of breach into the mainstream, quite as it has done.
Wow. Well, I think we ought to bring on our guest, who's much more of an expert, either one of us, in this field. She's a native and resident of upstate New York who saw her first UFO at age 12. She's a military veteran, retired information security professional from the aerospace industry. She's an author and a columnist, And she's a statistician, which is what we need in this field. We need the facts, only the facts, ma'am. So please welcome our special guest tonight, Cheryl Costa.
Hi.
Hi there. So I hope you've seen that report already, Cheryl, but I wonder if you could comment on it.
I saw a private conversation between that male reporter and Mr. Zabel. Okay, it was an hour long, and they talked privately about the fact that one reporter had interviewed David.
Ooh.
And it was very compelling. And I was at Contact in the Desert last week, and I was on a disclosure panel. Okay. And one of the points that got brought up on that disclosure panel, and it was an all-star panel. In fact, I kind of felt a little nervous being there with some of these people. But one of the big points that got brought up is that when you look at classified material, they used to tell us that, like government official use only was sticky stuff. Then you got into secret, and that could be grave damage to the country, and top secret could be very, very bad stuff. And they said that this stuff, if released properly in front of Congress, could be catastrophic. Okay. And I was kind of scratching my head about catastrophic, but then after I heard this conversation between Zabel and this reporter who interviewed Mr. Gresh, some people could be looking at some time in jail. Some of the people who have been, all the stuff that you've heard over the years, the way this material has been suppressed, and how some of us have been, quite literally attacked by people that were associated with the government. Okay. And a lot of very bad stuff was done to a lot of people, pushing this stuff deeper and deeper down into the intelligence infrastructure, so to speak. And this guy's sort of blowing the whistle on the fact that there's some nefarious things going on there. And, oh, by the way, we're not alone. And we have equipment that has been built and flown by non-human intelligences, plural.
Wow. Now, when you
in fact, I sent News Nation an op-ed piece this morning, using my stats as a point.
Oh, good. Absolutely. That's wonderful. Yeah. Like I said, we need the stats. We need the facts, and thank you for doing that very hard and tedious work to keep track of all this information. But when you say catastrophic, did you get the impression that they were talking about catastrophic in the way that it's going to cause worldwide panic type catastrophe, or that it's going to be catastrophic for people that have been involved in the suppression of the information?
It will make, the way it was put to me was, it will make Watergate look like a hissy fit. Okay. It will be deeper and more complex and nastier than what Watergate was.
Well, people went to prison.
Yes, they did, and very likely they will go to prison again.
That's
if this
wild.
comes out, So I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So, do you can you tell us a little bit about the project that you've been involved in? I think you and Linda Moulton Howe have been partnering on gathering. No.
Linda Miller Costa.
Oh, Linda Miller. I'm sorry. Okay. So you guys have been working together to compile all this data.
Here's the goofy thing. When we first came out with our first book of statistics in 2017, I was still writing my column for the Syracuse New Times. It was about 3 years before they went out of business. Okay. I had been collecting data for New York State. New York State was my beat. And Linda and I in 2015 were had been showing some of the stuff I had collected for New York State. And we'd showed it to some former New York State MUFON state directors and top investigators, that kind of thing, retired guys, right?
Yeah.
And they were saying, wow, we didn't know there was a cluster there. We didn't know there was a cluster there either. And who knew that county was a hot spot and that kind of thing. So quite literally in October of 2015, Linda and I were in a situation, we were sitting in our favorite pub waiting for our burgers, had a couple of pints there, and we were sitting here talking. And she said, what if we did the whole country? Now, here's the thing you got to understand. I have been the public face of this data for the past 7 or 8 years. Okay. I've got the arts and entertainment degree. I've got the writing degree. I've got the top hat and the cane. Okay. Linda is the real scientist of the two of us. She's the real scientist. She worked at the National Academy of Science. She was the head scientific librarian at the Environmental Protection Agency for 15 years. She's got the real science degrees. I'm a journalist, but in my military experience and my career with Lockheed Martin, I was an analyst. So I know how to take data and do magic with it to make sense of it. Okay. So she gave me the scientific guidelines and said, we're going to do it this way and this way and this way. And then I did the analysis by the direction of a bona fide scientist. And we found amazing stuff. We have we've got 55 books of statistics out there. Okay. And we've got one for every state with detail right down to the zip code and village level. Okay. If you go on Amazon and search for UFO and the name of your state, UFO, we'll say UFO in Ohio and where to find them. That's the name of the book. Every state is named like that. UFO, your state, and where to find them. Kind of that fantastic piece of where to find them title, you know. Yeah. And there's a book out there for every one of your states. It's priced under $20. In most cases, they're $12 to $15. And you've got this book you can dazzle your friends with because you can look up your state. It's just your state, your county, your zip code. And if there's been sightings in your village or city, it's there for 20 years. Not the stories, just the data of how big it was and what shapes they were.
I see. Oh, what a great reference book to have.
We put all 50 books out between Halloween 2022 and Christmas 2022.
Oh my gosh.
Amazon went bananas. They went bananas because we hammered them on putting 50 books up. And that's our desk reference.
Look. We've got it on the screen now. Look,
that's the desk reference. That came out in 2021. That goes to all 50 states with detail down to the counties. But the thing is an inch thick. Okay, or actually an inch and a half thick. We're credited with a concussion. Some lady hit her husband over the head with it, and and
it must
you can't make this stuff up, you know. And the reason it's pink, you can see it on Bill's copy better. I've got the fuzz on my thing. The reason it's pink is back in 2019, before we knew about COVID. Some of the usual suspects in DC, our lobbyists and people like that, said if Senator Rubio gets a bill attached to a continuing spending package. Now, Linda and I had 30-year careers in DC. We knew what that meant. Okay, and he says if they get congressional hearings, maybe in 2020, maybe in 2021, you're the only people who have ever. You ladies are the only people who have ever done the statistics. Not even Blue Book did this stuff. And would you be willing to testify before Congress? And of course, we sat there with a lot of heartburn saying, wait a minute, we were government contractors. You spend your whole career trying not to have to testify before Congress. Okay. And so we said, yeah, okay, fine. So we do English tea in our household. Okay. So we were having tea one afternoon right after we heard about this. And we said, okay, imagine we're on C-SPAN. We know what congressional hearings look like. They're going to be up there thumbing through big books and things. We want people to know that this book was made by a couple of women. So we made it bright fuchsia. You can flag an aircraft with this thing, you know.
What a great idea.
That's why we call it the Pink Book.
And it really will stand out on the bookshelf too. You don't see that many pink books.
No,
So it'll
no.
be easy to find, in my bookshelf over there.
Now this one's a reference book, and we got a lot of mail from people saying, "Wait a minute, it only goes down to the county. I want to know about my burg, okay, or my village or my city." So it was spring of 2020. We were in lockdown, all dressed up, no place to go, And so one day I sat down and I ran a report to see how big it would actually be if we did all 50 states right down to the zip code or city level. Okay. And it would have been 1.5 feet thick. It would have been 3 Oxford dictionaries thick. Okay. And we said, we can't publish a thing like that. It's too big. You can't, and nobody's going to buy it anyway. It'd be too expensive. So I got the crazy idea, and literally Linda and a lot of other people said I had to be nuts to be thinking about doing this, of putting out 50 individual state books. Okay. And people thought it was going to take years to do it. But remember, I was in engineering, and one of those classes I took in college was called Methods in Engineering. And I sat down and thought of a way to produce 50 individual state books and put them out and build them in under 18 months to about a year, and then put them all out in about 6 to 8 weeks.
What an undertaking. 50 books. That is amazing. Well,
what I'm working on right now is a hotspots book. Okay. And hotspots aren't what we think. There's a lot of TV producers that have come to us over the last few years and said, "Oh, I've had upwards of 15 of them come to me and say, "We want to go to that place where you can almost set your clock by them. It's like a bus schedule. They show up every day." And I looked at him and I said, "I don't think that exists." Okay. And I have since done the data work, and the mythical, regularly scheduled hotspot doesn't exist. But what we did find, 50 states, 20 years of data, 1 day, individual day data. So one state for 20 years equals 7,303 days. That's including the leap years. Okay. Days times 50 states, 146,060 days is what all of that was. Okay. We've identified 728 one-day hotspots, one-day flaps, someplace where nothing ever is going on. And then we'll give you an example. Indiana, April 16, 2008, Indiana, a state that averages 2 sightings a week, had 25 in one day. It came to be known as the Kokomo Lights. And we've identified 728 events like that nobody knows about.
Since you've done 50 books for all states, I'm assuming that there's not one state that hasn't had sightings and reports.
Okay, let's say let me give it to you this way. Okay, let me give you some high numbers here. There are 3,135 counties in the United States. 3,135 counties. 3,030 counties had sightings 2001 to 2020. Okay, 2001 to 2020. 105 counties did not report sightings in 20 years. Those counties were rural counties, they were poor counties, and they were lacking for rural broadband. Okay.
What does that say to you?
It says we need rural broadband because if people can't report, if people can't report, we can't count them. Yeah. They may have had sightings, but they have no easy way to do it. Right. Yeah. So, okay, then there are 35,879 municipalities in the United States, villages, towns, cities, that type of thing. 20,348 reported UFOs. There are 41,692 zip codes. 18,605 zip codes reported UFOs. That's 167,632 eyewitness reports in that 20-year period.
Wow.
And I usually can roll that off into the doctor's office and dazzle the waiting room.
Well, it's really, it's very stark when you consider those numbers. It's like, I know that we all hear about UFO sightings or someone saying, oh, I saw something and this, that, and the other. But when you put it all together like that, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
Well, do you know what the problem was? The New York Times, we came out with a book in 2017. The data was 2001 to 2015. It was our first effort. Okay. And the New York Times did a huge Science magazine article about us because Ralph Blumenthal, the same guy him and Leslie Kean came out with the ATIP story, and they just did this story over the weekend with Mr. Gesh thing. Okay. He went to his editors with 2 copies of the White Book, threw them on the desk of his editor, and says, I know why we don't report UFOs, because it's all stories and anecdotal information. Some old ladies in Syracuse did the science.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, the response by the old guard in the UFO community was, why didn't you go back 40 years? That's the golden age of UFOs, Cheryl and Linda. Well, pat us on the head. We're dumb broads. We don't know anything. And so when we came out with the Pink Book, we didn't include 1960 to 2000 in the book, but we did the chart to show how big the magnitude was. Okay. We got the data from both databases, and we did just a chart to show you how big it was. You could see the little 6 to 7 year cycle going across the page, up and down, up and down, up and down, like a little snake crawling across the lawn. Okay, that 40-year period amounted to 12,490 sightings over that 40-year period. Sounds like a lot, okay? I've got that many in 2012, 2013, and 2014 each year. If that's the golden age of UFOs from 2001 to 2020, baby, we're in a platinum or golden age.
So basically, it's been increasing all this time.
We have been up to our butts in UFOs for the last 20 years. The press doesn't report them. They won't talk to us. We're kooks, nuts, and crackpots. Okay. I had one reporter come to me and he said, well, you have to throw some of the kooks, nuts, and crackpots away. I said, what would you like to do? Take 30% off the top? He said, yeah. I said, I'll do you one better. Most researchers will say 70 or 80% is noise. So let's take 70%, throw that away, and keep 30%. Okay. 30% of 167,632 works out to about 50,000. Okay. That's for 20 years. It works out to about 2,500 per year. It works out to 210 a month and about 4 a week. But think about that. If those are the real starships that are visiting us that are made by non-human intelligences, that's 210 starships a month for the past 240 months of 20 years that have been visiting the USA. Again, there are people who say to me, but Cheryl, they got to be rarer than that. And I say to them, you really need a nightlight, don't you? You've got to knock the number down so much that it's unbelievably rare because you don't think they can possibly get here from there. And that's where their head's coming from. Okay. So I said, okay, let's throw 99% away. It works out to 1,676 for 20 years, 84 per year. And if these are the bona fide real starships, it's 7 a month for the 240 months of 20 years every month that have been coming here to the United States. It only takes one. Okay, but the data suggests that there are at least 7. Now, if you talk, we'll go one more beyond that. If you did all the study there with the ONDI report and something NASA said last week, 5%'s the golden number. Did you see that stuff in the news? Okay. Well, the old ladies, we had that data 2 years ago. We knew 5% 2 years ago. I can't tell you how we did it. Okay. But it wasn't confidential information. We just put together some factors that people were talking about based on polling data, the measured data, and some other mathematics. And we came up with 5% as well. So 5% suggests that there were 419 per, it would have been 8,400 per year. It would have been 419 per year, 35 a month, 8 per week, and 1.14 per day over for that 20-year period. That's 5% of the UFOs of all that report stuff. Okay. And saying we threw 95% of the data away, but that's still that funny, goofy number of 35 starships a month for 240 months of 20 years. Doesn't that just blow your socks off? You know,
it really does. It really does. Because I mean, we know they can't all be from another planet. You know, we don't even.
I never said that. All the above.
Nobody ever said that.
All the above. All the above.
Yeah.
Time travelers, interdimensionals, higher beings manifesting themselves, making themselves look like ships, long distance warp ships, or whatever. Whatever's out there, I say all the above. We don't know until somebody tells us what really has been coming here.
That's true. That's true. It's true. But, but I guess what I was referring to is that, some of these, are later identified as, some kind of, military craft or something like that. But certainly with those kind of numbers, you can't really argue that they're all, just some identified military craft.
Okay, let's go there a minute. I did a story about some guys in February 1947. That is 5 months before Roswell. Okay? They were at Syracuse University. It was a cold February day, Syracuse. Syracuse gets about 150 to 175 inches of snow a winter. I lived there for 14 years. Okay, but they still go to school with a foot of snow because I got plows and buses that can do it. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
these kids were up at Syracuse University. I wrote a newspaper story about this. They went past the Holden Observatory, classic observatory with the dome and everything, and opens up, and they saw the telescope doing this routine. Like somebody was looking at something. And they went into the building. It's not heated because heating changes the temperature of things and it distorts things. They went in and there was a professor in there looking at something. Okay. And he said, he heard him. He said, "Oh my God, thank God you're here. Take a look at this." He sets it up. He said, "Take a look." And the guy looked through it. Then the other kid looked through it and they saw these wedge-shaped ships high in the atmosphere, very high. Suborbital, high in the atmosphere. Okay. And they said, "Yeah, we saw that." And they sketched it. And he said, "Okay," they all agreed they were looking at the same thing. There were hundreds of them. Now, zoom ahead. ATIP story breaks in December 2017. Okay. Remember that little gimbal picture that they put with the New York Times article? It's still out there with the New York Times article. You don't want to look at the one from CBS's gimbal. You don't want to look at NBC or CNN's gimbal. Go to the one from the New York Times. Don't worry about the picture. Listen to the audio very carefully. At one point later in the audio, the pilot says, "Hey, I locked onto it. Hey, wow, cool. Look at that." And the other pilot says, "Oh my God, there's a whole fleet of them." All of the media channels erase that part of the audio track.
Wow.
I'm a journalist. I used to do radio and television. I listened to that and noticed they would always manage to start talking or cut it off at the point where the pilot says, "Look at that. There's a whole fleet of them." And that's what the guys with the Nimitz we're talking about. Okay. And here's the biggest issue about coming clean with this thing. This opens it up. This will be proof to academia. This will be proof to the American medical community, the American psychiatric community, that those of us who have seen these things, those of us who have been touched by these things, are not kooks, nuts, and crackpots. There has been a real impact by people who have been touched by ET. Okay. And the average person cannot go into a social worker or a psychologist and not get laughed out of the office. Okay. And the only place you can come is you have to go to one of these conventions and go to the little AA meeting in the morning before everything gets started for experiencers and bare your soul. Okay. There was one of them. There was one of them at the at Contact in the Desert. I was at Contact in the Desert last week, and we must have had 50, 60 people in the one they had there in the morning and later at night. We had 2 sessions a day. Okay. And people were bearing their souls, and they reported some very wild stuff. And so that's what this whole thing is, because the guys on the Nimitz that were on the radar ship, I was in the Navy for a long time. And I was at the 2019 Laughlin, Nevada show. Okay. And the table that I was sitting at with Joanne Richards and we're sitting across from the guys from the USS Pritchard. And I sat down and had a cup of coffee with their chief petty officer, who was in the radar in combat information. I used to work in combat information. I know what that's like. And he was telling me, he says, the guys in the radar shack, yeah, we hear about the pilots, but the guys in the radar ship, suddenly it was like a movie. Their reality got changed. This is real. These guys are real. They were sworn to secrecy. They came home. They're all twitchy. Their reality has completely been changed. Their paradigm view of life and the universe has been changed. They can't tell their families. And after a couple of months of them being twitchy, most of them, their wives started saying, okay, who is she?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And they couldn't go to the chaplain. They couldn't go to the base psychiatrist to talk to anybody about it. And a bunch of guys almost lost their marriages over this because of this secrecy that's been pushed down on this. Oh, you can't say anything about it. They weren't here. You know, this is the insidiousness of this secrecy that's been pushed on this topic matter since the Cold War. It made sense during the Cold War, but the Cold War was over with at the end in the early 90s. Okay. We really don't need to have it classified down at that level, but people have control. It gives them power, and it needs to come out, and some heads need to roll, because this was a secret that was kept too long. And here's the deal. If you wanted to know, you asked me once when I made the comment about catastrophic. Okay,
yes.
That revealing all this stuff would be catastrophic. Think of it like this. Guy comes out to his wife and says, honey, I've been having an affair. She says, okay, what else you been lying to me about? That's catastrophic. Okay.
I see. Wow.
Have I rattled your world yet?
Well, yeah, I have to say, it's just so interesting. I was really, really heavily involved in UFO research for a number of years. And it just seemed like we were like on a hamster wheel with getting information, getting solid information out of government and governments. There are a couple of governments, as you know, that were a little bit more forthcoming, but even they are keeping the real secrets about it down, because we have a finger into almost every free world intelligence unit from any country. Yeah, and we've been controlling them to some degree. So it's our people who have been sitting on this stuff. And I'm sorry, this is the biggest story never told. And I'm glad this David Koresh guy came out. I am just jumping up and down. I'm so happy he did. I'm definitely going to be watching him with interest, watching those hearings. And I'm also going to check out that show on Sunday night, because this is sort of stirring up my UFO interest again. You know, it's like, okay, maybe we are going to find out something before I kick it, you know.
Well, when I was a newspaper, when I was a columnist, I used to get mail from people all the time. Oh, by the way, for the people who say, wow, you were a columnist for 7 years, or a weekly column, that must be fun, writing a column every week. It's a 700 to 1,000 word term paper every Thursday. Okay. Just remember that. Okay. It got difficult.
I used to be a managing editor on UFO magazine for at least 5 years. I'm not sure how long, but I only had, monthly or even bi-monthly deadlines. So I can't imagine having a deadline like that every single week.
Do you know what torment was? Wednesday morning, knowing you don't have an article to turn in this afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
Or first thing in the morning Thursday. Okay.
Yeah.
And Linda was really key with that, because she would say, you haven't talked about this and you haven't talked about that, 10 minutes with her over breakfast coffee. Said, oh, hey, that's a hot idea. And I'll spend the day researching it and banging it out, But it wasn't all just reporting sightings. When I first started the column, it was reporting sightings. But what I did when I reported the sighting, I didn't sensationalize it like other people did. I wrote it I gave it the respect of being just another news story, the robbery 2 blocks away, the fire over in the next neighborhood, the speed trap that caught everybody here yesterday. I wrote it just like a normal story, and wrote it that way. Okay. And people really enjoyed the respect that we gave the topic. In fact, what was funny was the editor, he tried, the guy, 6 different editors threw me out of their office when I proposed the idea, different newspapers. They just laughed me out of the office, threw me out of the office, had security escort me to the door out of the office. And this one editor from a weekly, his name was Larry Dietrich, God bless him. He's passed now, but he passed during COVID. He called me up and says, come on over, let's talk. He knew me from a different paper. So I said, okay, fine. So I came over and we had a cup of coffee together, and we were about the same age. So we read a lot of the same stuff. We were both in high school when Chariots of the Gods came out, that kind of thing. Okay. There were guys like Jack Anderson who were writing stories and books in that time, and a bunch of other people that were notables of that era of the late 60s, early 70s authors. So he said, I'm sympathetic to the topic. I'm the editor in chief. I can't write that, but you can. And then he got this tone like the dead Private Roberts from Princess Bride. I'll most likely kill you in the morning kind of tone. But he says, I'll try you out for a month. And about 4 weeks later, he calls me up and he says, get over here now. And I thought, wow, that's it, So I get over there. I'm 10 minutes late getting into the meeting. The parking lot's all torn up. They're paving it. I get up there 10 minutes late. I walk in. All the columnists are sitting around this big board table, and he's lecturing them about something. He stops, looks over at me, points at me, and says, there's our rock star. I said, what are you talking about? He says, you've been here 4 weeks, and you're on our web edition. You're pulling more page views than all of the columnists combined. He says, keep doing it. And 6 months later, the digital editor, who was my contact, I was always a freelance. I was never actually, I was paid, but I was not on staff, just a regular 40-hour week reporter. I was always a freelance special columnist. So he calls, the digital editor calls me up about 3 or 4 months later, and he says, you're pulling a national audience. We're a dinky little weekly paper in Syracuse, New York. Him and the editor get up on a platform at the Christmas party that year and said, Cheryl is pulling an international audience. Of course, everybody was like, wow, weekly paper, we're pulling an international audience. Cool, So,
yeah.
But, papers have been going under left and right. So they went under eventually.
Exactly.
But for the people who want my articles, for the people who want my articles.
Yeah.
Because I was always a freelance, I technically owned my articles. So when the paper closed, the publisher let me come over and pull all my final versions of the articles, the final edited versions, off the server on a thumb drive. I took them home, put them in an 8.5 by 11 book, and published all 238 articles. So the book's available on Amazon. It's called The UFO Beat.
Oh, that's great. That was a great idea.
And it was I was never censored, and I did some pretty provocative articles. That kind of articles got the newspaper got phone calls from Congress offices and things like this. I only had one article. It wasn't censored, but it was spiked. A spike. You used to be an editor. You know what I mean? You're not going to publish that when you put it on the spike, Mm-hmm. And I only had one article spiked. It was 3 years into my column. Okay, 150 articles in, and they said, we're not going to publish that one. I said, why? It says, because you were snarky and you have established such gravitas with your column. We felt it was below you.
What were you snarky about?
Disclosure. Oh. I wrote a story of what disclosure is going to look like. Okay, it's the president sitting there with the vice president, the head of the Senate, the head of the House, maybe the Joint Chiefs of Staff standing behind her, the Secretary of State saying, "My fellow Americans, we have had contact with a spacefaring race," and the impact it was going to be. Now, what's the impact? Suddenly, the ETs are going to be the media darlings on Good Morning America and all the talk shows. We're going to start seeing reconciliation things of like on The View. Here's Whitley Strieber or Travis Walton shaking hands and having conciliatory hugs with the aliens that abducted them, that kind of thing. On national television, there's going to be alien perfume. Aliens are going to influence our fashions. It's going to be, we won't be able to get away from them for years. And the last part of the article was it's a script for an late night ambulance chaser lawyer firm. If you've lost a job due to reporting a UFO sighting or had cattle mutilations or your children or yourself abducted, there's through new galactic treaties or maybe funds available and you may be deserving of financial reimbursement. Contact our firm. Like I said, I was being a comedian about the whole thing, and they felt it was below me. But that article's in the book too.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, you've definitely been on the sort of statistical and fact finding side of things and sort of record keeping. But it sounds to me like when you started doing these columns, or maybe even before with other things that you'd written, you started getting a lot of people reaching to you saying, hey, this happened to me or that happened to me. Did you hear a lot of personal stories? And
I sometimes, yeah, I did.
Share one without identifying anybody. No,
I can't out anybody. In fact, that was something my boss and I agreed on before I even gave him the 4 articles for the first 4 articles. We're not going to out anybody.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
Well, there was the stigma issue. So,
and a lot of really, but I guess it's getting better. But
okay, but the thing was also that there were a lot of UFO reports in these databases were sometimes not much more than a one-liner. I saw this really cool thing last night, but sometimes it would read like, my wife and I were laying on the hood of our car outside of town in a farmer's field, and we saw this thing. Okay, so my article would read, I'm not a pure journalist. My degree is in entertainment writing. Okay, So I had a little slack there. So if I said Bob and Susie were on the hood of his 67 Le Mans, Pontiac Le Mans, watching the sky, and they saw it wasn't Bobby and Susie, and it wasn't a 67 Le Mans. Okay.
Right.
But I always goosed up the story, but the facts were always correct.
Right.
Okay.
The pertinent
Now
facts, yeah.
I used to get invited to backyard barbecues. I would take somebody from our security staff from the newspaper over with me to make sure it's not a lynch mob, So, okay, I would go over there, and within 5 minutes, you find out, it's really a backyard barbecue and a family reunion. I'd have a burger and a beer in my hand, and then I'd let the guard go. Okay. And then usually somebody in the family would take me into the patio and introduce me to their Uncle Ralph, who was flew in the back of B-17s in World War II, and he saw Foo Fighters or something like that. Or the matriarch. Yeah. Now, this is a cool one. The matriarch would take me and sit me down in the living room with that burger and that beer, open up a family album, show me very old pictures of family members, sometimes going back 4 generations, and say, Uncle so-and-so, tin type picture. He was abducted 10 years after the Civil War. Here's Aunt so-and-so in the gay 90s. She was, and they would, some of these families, the 3 families I talked to had been touched for 3 or 4 generations by ET. Okay. In fact, this one group of historians in this one county in upstate New York came to me and said, would you please tell us who they were so we can document this? I said, I can't. That's the problem. I can't reveal that source, but there was that kind of stuff. So, and you wouldn't believe how many women came to me and told me I was touched 20 years ago. And they recently touched me again, and I got to meet my hybrid children. And they were all crawling all over me, talking to me telepathically, this kind of thing. And I had at least 3 different women come to me and tell me that kind of stuff over a period of about 7 years. It was wild. Okay. There was one guy. There was one guy who went outside to get his dog, and it was beautiful, starlit night, and he's talking to his dog, and all of a sudden there's this huge thing over his backyard. Okay, bright light. And that was the last thing he remembered. And he woke up the next day 280 miles away down near Scranton, Pennsylvania, in a farmer's field. And he was loosely dressed in women's clothes because they sometimes put the wrong clothes on you after they've abducted you.
Oh.
And the Pennsylvania State Police couldn't, they didn't believe him or anything like this, and they had to get somebody down there they had to get somebody from the hometown, come down and identify him. They had to get somebody from a state police psychiatric people to sit down and talk with him and everything like that. But I've heard some wild stories, and
have you ever had anybody share any information that they received from other beings when they were in their experiences, and like about
what was it?
About
they were
what kind of information?
Hellfire and Brimstone Bible Thumper came back spiritual. A total agnostic came back spiritual.
Wow.
And they all came back. Everyone I talked to said they, whatever they were told or something like this, almost all to a person came back and said, and they told us to take care of our planet. And one of the women actually told us, it put it in this term. They told us to stop peeing in our nest.
Yeah.
With pollution and all this stuff,
That's good.
So ET seems to be being very nanny. They seem to be looking out for us, protecting us. And I think they're very, very concerned we're gonna liquidate ourselves.
Well,
and we're just stupid enough to do it.
So. We are not very bright, but yeah, it's.
To be honest with you, I wish I was still writing a column, and I've tried. I've pitched a lot of newspapers, and they laugh me out. Again, they laugh me out of the office. I've got a track record. Hell, I won an award for this stuff, and it's not good enough. It's not good enough for him. Steve Bassett told me the other night. He says that might change in a couple of weeks.
It might. It just might. I'm hoping so, because we should be covering this just like we cover everything else. I mean. It's very strange to try to avoid something. Now, I don't know if you saw anything, but earlier, it just came out, but I guess this happened in May in Las Vegas. There was some sort of a light sky that crashed, and it hit the ground, and it was inadvertently caught on a police officer's body cam. He was making some kind of a traffic stop or arrest or something. So you get the image and you see this thing crash and you hear it as it crashes. Not long after that, there was a 911 call from a family there in Vegas that said there was someone in their backyard. But the more the guy talked, he said, but they're like 8 feet tall. He said he goes, I don't think they're human. He goes, I don't think they're human. And I guess there was some debris in their backyard as well. By the time the police got there, these beings gone, and I guess they had been seen by other people as well. In fact, I think including an officer saw someone lurking back there. And whatever this debris was taken away. It wasn't there anymore, but there was like a burn mark or something on their yard where this had fallen. So they were taking it more seriously because they just had their own officers reporting this thing that fell out of the sky. And then they get this call from this family. They sounded, really nervous and kind of embarrassed almost to say it, but you could tell they were so scared that they were definitely going to call for help. But, I'm going to hold that and see what that turns out to be, because they are still investigating that. I mean, the local police are investigating it because they took it seriously. Look at
it this way. It's going to get real interesting. It's going to get real interesting over the next couple of months, because I was on this panel.
Oh my gosh.
I was on a panel at Contact in the Desert, and we had the best and brightest there explaining how much the infrastructure of this process of keeping everything classified and buried and everything is coming apart.
Breaking down.
The morning after we had that conversation. I know we got to go probably.
We're running over time. Oh my goodness. But thank you so much. And I hope you'll agree to come back again sometime.
Anytime, honey.
Especially when more of this information comes out about the hearings and things. If we do get indeed some more disclosure than we're used to. But Cheryl Costa, thank you so much. Everybody go to Amazon and look for Cheryl Costa and buy hers. Take care, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. Bye.